There are very few horror gaming experiences as effective as the original Little Nightmares. Its gameplay fundamentals were hardly unique, but the atmosphere and general creepiness that imbues every inch of the game's deliciously unnerving world has rarely been matched by its contemporaries. Almost 4 years after its predecessor scared us silly, Little Nightmares 2 is here and every bit as chill-inducing as what came before it. Little Nightmares 2 is definitely a show, don't tell type of experience. There's not a single line of dialogue spoken throughout the entire game. Instead, most of the game's narrative is told through environmental storytelling and surreal cutscenes. This time around you play as Mono, a boy wearing a paper bag on his head, who must work with Six, the protagonist of the first game, to navigate through the Pale City. Your task is to uncover the mysteries of the ginormous tower that hangs over the city, controlling citizens through television screens. While you're definitely required to fill in a lot of the blanks yourself, and the central yarn takes a little while to get going, the ending itself is rather haunting and gives you plenty to think about. Fan theorists are going to love digging into this one. The gameplay of Little Nightmares 2 hasn't changed from the first game, so expect a basic puzzle platformer with stealth and chase segments thrown in to keep things interesting. If you want a comparison point, the Little Nightmares franchise most closely resembles games like Limbo or Inside. Similar to those titles, you'll spend the roughly 5-hour campaign doing plenty of jumping, climbing and puzzle solving. The puzzles themselves are mostly straightforward apart from one in the final chapter which is poorly signposted. Death comes quickly for Mono, and the character is often butchered in quite unsettling ways. While some players might take a morbid pleasure from watching each well-animated death sequence, the trial and error nature of these sections can be frustrating. The stealth sections, which task you with playing a sort of demented game of hide and seek against some truly frightening creatures, are a real highlight. Mono is essentially powerless against these monsters, the tension is ratcheted up nicely as you try to creep through the level without being spotted. Little Nightmares 2 is not only a beautiful game to look at, but the sense of atmosphere throughout is genuinely unsettling, in the best possible way. Like its predecessor, the game wonderfully contrasts childlike characters and objects with an oppressively bleak world and makes you feel extremely vulnerable as you explore it. You're frequently asked to move towards grotesque noises rather than running away from them, which is brilliantly effective in making you want to put down the controller and crawl under the nearest blanket. The locations you explore range from a school, a hospital and a hotel, and each is more chilling than the last. These are all pretty generic horror settings, but the game's unique art style and impeccable environment design help make them feel fresh and scary again. Bizarrely, Little Nightmares 2 is a strictly single-player experience, despite the fact that you spend almost the entire game working alongside an AI-controlled companion. Perhaps Tarsier Studios worried that playing with a buddy would blunt the game's atmosphere, but it feels like an odd choice whichever way you slice it. Thankfully, Six's AI is solid, and we never experienced an occasion in which she didn't do what she was supposed to. Little Nightmares 2 is simply more of the same, but that's no bad thing. The core gameplay is still pretty basic, but the environments you'll explore and horrifying creatures you'll encounter will live with you long after you roll the credits. Don't be surprised if after a late night play session you find yourself leaving your bedside light on or checking under your bed just to make sure there isn't something lurking underneath.